Horizon Zero Dawn will reportedly get a remaster for PS5 and a multiplayer spin-off if a new rumor is to be believed. It originally came out in 2017 and is one of several new AAA IPs Sony created during the PS4 generation. Since then, Horizon Zero Dawn has been released on PC and has sold over 20 million copies. Developer Guerrilla Games released a sequel named Horizon Forbidden West in February of this year. It was received great by Horizon fans and other gamers, with many praising the quality of side quests and NPC interactions. A VR game called Horizon Call of the Mountain is also in development for PSVR 2, and it looks like more games in this series are on the way. The source isn't sure if this project is a remaster or a full remake, but mentions that it will feature improved visuals, character models, animations, and more. The source confirms that the aim is to match the quality of the models to the ones in Horizon Forbidden West. While every rumor should be taken with a grain of salt, this re-release doesn't seem to be outside the realm of possibility. Horizon Zero Dawn is only 5 years old, and gamers can already play it at 60 FPS on a PS5. So, the ceiling for upgrades that can come with this re-release is probably not that high. On the other hand, Sony has already remastered some PS4 games on PS5, such as Uncharted 4, Marvel's Spider-Man and Lost Legacy, with extra features like support for 120 FPS. Perhaps the idea behind this remaster is to allow fans to experience Horizon Zero Dawn's gameplay at a much higher frame rate along with key visual improvements. A remastered version of Horizon Zero Dawn can bring the game more in line with Horizon Forbidden West, and it can feature a trove of improvements across the board. Both games look very similar, but the sequel looks a little better thanks to the PS5's power. An HD facelift could bring the original game to that level, and also give new players a chance to experience a more definitive version complete with all the DLC. It would also be a good way to hype up the upcoming Netflix show, which Sony most likely wants to do. Guerrilla Games struck it big with Horizon Zero Dawn in 2017, creating one of Sony's most recognizable modern PlayStation franchises. Sony has pushed Aloy and her post-apocalyptic universe by promoting Horizon Forbidden West as a PS5 showcase and announcing Horizon Call of the Mountain as the PSVR 2's killer app. A recent rumor also suggests Zero Dawn will receive a PS5 remaster alongside a potential multiplayer spin-off. While many would expect this spin-off to involve group archery, it might make sense for Guerrilla to tap its history with Killzone and create a prequel around the Pharaoh Plague. While this round of rumors also hinted at Horizon Forbidden West coming to PC, most of the conversation has revolved around the necessity of remastering a 5-year-old game so soon after Naughty Dog's The Last of Us Part 1. Other PlayStation-exclusive titles like God of War, Infamous and Bloodborne that arguably need more updates have started trending online in response. However, a multiplayer game set in the Horizon universe has a lot of potential, especially using humanity's downfall to set a heartfelt, tragic narrative around some high-octane gunplay. The Horizon franchise takes place in the far future, with Aloy only existing because life on Earth was reseeded through Projekt Zero Dawn. Through audio logs and main story quests in Horizon Zero Dawn, players learn that the planet's ecosystem was wiped out by robots developed at Faro Automated Solutions, FAS. CEO Ted Faro came to prominence for his company's work combating climate change alongside Elisabeth Sobek, but he eroded much of that goodwill by pivoting FAS to military contracts. FAS line of chariot robots were ostensibly peacekeepers, designed to be hacker-proof as to never fall into the wrong hands. The San Francisco-based greenhouse facility in Forbidden West also gives fans a closer look at the chariot line's unique ability to consume biomatter as fuel and to reproduce through Horus units, also known as metal devils to the planet's future inhabitants. Naturally, this all backfires when a swarm goes rogue and corrupts other machines. Seeing no way to stop the so-called Pharaoh Plague sweeping across the planet, Elisabeth Sobek starts Projekt Zero Dawn to design AIs capable of cracking the chariot robot's code and then repopulate the Earth using autonomously designed animal machines to clean the land, sea, and air. She enlists military leaders to help buy time for Zero Dawn's completion via Operation Enduring Victory, which drafted millions of civilians to combat the Pharaoh Plague under the belief that the project is a super weapon. A multiplayer game could easily be set in the more primeval future depicted by Guerrilla, with players selecting members of their favorite Horizon tribe and hunting giant robots together, or one another if it gets a PvP slant. However, in terms of world building and expanding the scope of what this brand can be, a military shooter starring inexperienced soldiers drafted for Operation Enduring Victory can go a few different ways. On one hand, this Pharaoh Plague combat simulator could be a 4-player cooperative shooter akin to Left 4 Dead that requires precision strikes to destroy mobs of Scarab-class robots before they overwhelm the party. That same gunplay could be adapted into a more typical competitive scene if the developer is concerned with gameplay over lore. Or the game can take more out of Valve's formula by having player-controlled robots fighting survivors. Even bigger encounters like Kopesh or Horus-class robots could also set up asymmetric deathmatches. Guerrilla Games would be well equipped to handle a straightforward co-op or PvP shooter thanks to the nearly 10 years it spent working on Killzone, its big sci-fi franchise prior to Horizon Zero Dawn. There couldn't be a happy ending to a title centered around the Pharaoh Plague. There could be catharsis in watching a group of soldiers deliver the parts or hold the line long enough to complete Projekt Zero Dawn, not unlike Rogue One, a Star Wars story. That formula has proven just as effective in video games like Halo 3 ODST. The Horizon spin-off could end with Elisabeth Sobek sealing the last door to protect GAIA Prime before wandering to her childhood home where Aloy later finds her body. Or the game could be a Monster Hunter-style MMO. Horizon Forbidden West's long-rumored DLC, which was featured in the recent leak, has been bolstered by recent comments by Lance Reddick, for example. Despite the presence of killer robotic machines and ancient humans, Horizon's narrative has always placed the story of its present-day humans at its core. In addition to saving the Earth from another ecological disaster, Aloy's motivations have been equally fueled by a desire to aid the tribes she's encountered. In an attempt to make this task more compelling to the player, Guerrilla Games has subsequently spent a lot of time developing the backstories and customs of its people. Between the Tenekth tribe who worship ancient US soldiers and the Nora who champion a matriarchal societal structure, there's plenty of diversity in history to be explored. It's easy to imagine Horizon's rumored multiplayer spin-off being the ideal setting for the studio to do just this. Letting players pick their own tribe, whilst retracing their steps from the Zero Dawn project onwards, could even set up the franchise's seemingly inevitable third game. An adventure that will likely see Aloy attempt to unite each group of humans against Nemesis. Although the Horizon series tribes would fit into the story and premise of the rumored multiplayer spin-off well, their presence would arguably benefit the gameplay side of its equation even more. Right now, it's worth keeping in mind that none of the supposed insiders have outlined what type of experience they've allegedly caught wind of. While it's easy to imagine a Monster Hunter-style game working well, nothing is guaranteed. However, certain aspects of the tribes would fit in well with almost any setup. Players being able to create their own character before placing them into a tribe of their choosing tops that list. Not only would the ability to customize a character foster a personal relationship with them, it would also go some way towards alleviating the potential headaches Guerrilla Games might face while trying to find a replacement for Aloy. In addition to offering limited-time cosmetics dedicated to each tribe for players to chase, similar to the classes in Destiny 2, Guerrilla Games could take the concept a step further. The studio could also build the rumored Horizon multiplayer spin-offs modes and missions specifically around the concept of those tribes. Every time players would step out to play, they'd find themselves working towards shared goals and unlocks with their fellow members. In the grand scheme of things, outside of titles like Helldivers, the concept is rarely seen and therefore ripe for exploration. Based on the success it's cultivated with Horizon Zero Dawn and its sequel Horizon Forbidden West, it's fair to say that Guerrilla Games isn't lacking from either a creative or development standpoint. If the studio needs examples of how to bring together a tribal-focused multiplayer spin-off, though, there are successful examples it could take comfort from. Despite their different takes on the fall of humanity, Guerrilla Games' theoretical multiplayer Horizon spin-off could build on the same communal themes that The Last of Us multiplayer was built around. While there was little in the way of story, every activity that players took part in contributed to the health of their own group of survivors. It's easy to imagine a Horizon multiplayer game based on the franchise's tribes being an evolution of this concept. Considering how popular Naughty Dog's mode was, a similar full-scale game would also likely find success among all the online offerings players have been treated to recently. It's worth keeping in mind that Naughty Dog's own confirmed The Last of Us multiplayer spin-off could feature a similar premise. Even though it's possible Sony could view both as a risk, there's just as much reason to believe it might view the release of each game as a way to experiment further with live service games. Considering how PlayStation Studios' Hermen Hulst has reaffirmed Sony's desire to continue pushing narrative-driven experiences, it's possible that each game could feature different types of stories and mechanics to appeal to separate groups of players. The Decima engine, which was used to create Horizon Zero Dawn and its sequel Horizon Forbidden West, is also going to power some upcoming PS5 releases. As well as being praised for their interesting open worlds and rich lore, the Horizon games have also been touted by critics and fans as being some of the best-looking titles released on their respective platforms. When Horizon Forbidden West launched and the reviews came in, it was seen by many as a gorgeous title, showing just how powerful the Decima engine was. The Decima engine, which can create entire in-game worlds, was first used by Horizon Forbidden West's developer Guerrilla Games when the studio was working on Killzone Shadowfall back in 2013. Following the release of that title, it was announced that Horizon Zero Dawn was being built with the same engine. Then, an updated version of Decima was used for the development of Horizon Forbidden West. While Decima has been used mainly by Guerrilla, the studio doesn't have an exclusive hold on the engine, as shown recently. In a Famitsu interview with PlayStation Studios head Hermen Hulst, it was revealed that the Decima engine would be utilized by several studios. Hulst didn't go over exactly which studios would be using the Decima engine to create games, but from a recently leaked document that listed upcoming Sony titles, already fans have an idea of a couple releases that could be using the tool. Firstly, there's the sequel to 2019's Death Stranding, which is reportedly set to use the Decima engine. This may not surprise gamers, as in 2016 it was revealed that Hideo Kojima's original Death Stranding was being built with Decima. Another upcoming game that is set to make use of Decima is Firesprite's Horizon Call of the Mountain, which is a PSVR 2 exclusive. Again, this may not be a surprise to many as Call of the Mountain is part of the Horizon franchise. However, considering Hulst's reference to the sharing of technology, this could mean that multiple studios will utilize Decima moving forward. Speaking of PlayStation leaks and future plans, the head of PlayStation Studios confirms that Sony will release live service games on PC the same day as consoles but not single-player games. Hulst's statements are part of a recent string of interviews where the executive reiterated the studio's intent to diversify PlayStation with continued expansion into PC, mobile, and live service games. Sony's investment into the PC gaming space has been a bit slow compared to Microsoft, but it appears that the company is now all in on the platform. Over the past 2 years, major PlayStation exclusives like God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn, and Marvel's Spider-Man have launched on Steam and the Epic Games Store. Most games that have received the PC treatment were still subject to a multi-year gap since their initial PlayStation launch. But that gap has only gotten smaller as Sony continues to invest in the PC platform. As far as PlayStation's upcoming live service games go, the gap between console and PC releases is entirely gone. In an interview with Julian Cheese on YouTube, Hermen Hulst, the head of PlayStation Studios, stated that the company's in-development live service games, of which there are 12, will all be released on day one for PC. Hulst states that live service games should release day and date with PC for the strength and engagement of the player base, but confirms that single-player games will still have at least a year gap between the PS5 and PC versions. PlayStation's expansion into live service games is something of a newer development for the company and one that Hulst believes Sony has had little success with in the past. Sony's recent acquisition of Bungie proves that the company is serious about finding success in the live service space, and player counts are crucial to that success. But, I would argue that there are big successful exclusive live service games. Look at Gran Turismo, and also Mario Kart 8, Animal Crossing New Horizons, Super Smash Bros. PlayStation's relationship with the PC platform is only getting stronger. And it appears that the company is beginning to favor software sales over hardware sales as it continues to release games on PC. But, it could backfire on them with the issue of piracy and waiting for a sale. God of War only sold 900,000 on PC, but the game was pirated more than 5 million times. Developing games simultaneously for PC and going day and date has another big downside. Majority of PC gamers are in the GTX 1060 range of graphics cards, and to meet those developers always keep them as the lowest common denominator. This could lead to PlayStation Studios not being able to take advantage of the PS5 and its SSD and I/O architecture. Head of PlayStation Studios Hermen Hulst also states that adaptations of From Software games could be on the way following Sony's increased investment in the company. PlayStation Productions is the entertainment company Sony created to manage the adaptations of its games. Already, PlayStation Productions has seen the release of the Uncharted movie starring Tom Holland, and it is involved in the upcoming The Last of Us TV series which just dropped its first teaser. While it isn't clear whether Hulst is confirming the production of an adaptation of a From Software title, fans believe that if PlayStation Productions were to work on such a project, Bloodborne would likely be the game to adapt. This is primarily due to Bloodborne being a PS4 exclusive, which means it would keep with PlayStation Productions' pattern of making adaptations for Sony-exclusive titles. Some fans would prefer to see a new game come out of this Sony investment in From Software, or even a remaster of Bloodborne, something many have been requesting for some time. It's fair to say that over the last few years, Sony hasn't stood still when it comes to the development of the PS5. On several occasions since the console's launch in November 2020, tweaks to its software have subsequently been made by the publisher. This has resulted in owners getting access to features like VRR and 1440p support, to name just two prominent examples. At the same time, though, several modders have been playing around with its software behind the scenes as well. When it comes to pieces of modern technology, it's normally only a matter of time before most are jailbroken by a modder after they're released to the public. What's remarkable about the PS5's own jailbreak, however, is the fact that it's happened before Sony's console has even celebrated its second anniversary. The process, which involves a person reverse engineering closed hardware and opening it up to customization, will likely have a significant impact on the rest of the console's lifecycle. Although the process of jailbreaking can be complicated, the rationale behind the concept is more straightforward. One of the biggest reasons why modders break open technology, in particular, is so that they can install software on hardware that would normally be incompatible with each other. Known as homebrews, the term is commonly applied to apps and programs. When it comes to gaming specifically, this type of modding has resulted in titles like Doom showing up in places that they weren't meant to. Players only have to look at what the PS5's modders have done since they finished their first jailbreak for similar evidence of this in action. Having opened up Sony's console, one modder called Lance McDonald has installed PT on their PS5 via USB stick. Back in early 2015, Konami removed the demo from the PlayStation Network following the cancellation of Silent Hills, ensuring that it was inaccessible to anyone who hadn't previously downloaded it. As it stands right now, though, the PS5's jailbreak is not far from completely over. Beyond needing a console with already outdated firmware to start the process, modders are still having problems actually running software like the Silent Hills demo once it's been opened up. This means the PS5 status quo is likely going to continue for some time to come while they continue to tinker. However, all of this homebrew development is likely heading in only one direction. Now that the PS5 has been cracked, other pieces of homebrew software will probably be added into the mix by modders. If the PS4 is any indication, software that enables everything from custom game patches to Linux support will show up online soon. History also shows it's not out of the question that emulators that allow Steam and mobile games to be played on a PS5 will become a possibility too. In the past, console games from Nintendo and Microsoft have also become available on PlayStation hardware through similar means. As a result of the PS5's jailbreak and the homebrew software it's likely going to help create, the presence of pirates on the console will eventually become an issue that Sony has to address. As has become the case with every other jailbroken console, certain sites on the internet will eventually begin offering downloads of the games that are available in the PS5's library. Thanks to the fact that the console's hardware will be wide open at that point, the piracy situation won't necessarily stop there either. At some point in the future, there's a decent chance that people will be able to buy USB sticks off the internet with games preloaded onto them as well. Players only have to look at Sony's own PlayStation Classic for a recent example of this phenomenon in action. Via those sticks, owners of the mini console were able to play pirated games from across the PS1's library. Emulators in that circumstance also allowed for the piracy of Game Boy and N64 games, demonstrating how far the PS5's jailbreak could be felt across the gaming industry. It's important to remember that jailbreaking is a morally complicated subject, primarily because the concept and the piracy it enables are considered to be illegal in most parts of the world. Publishers and developers lose out monetarily, which can in some circumstances impact prices and the number of projects that are put into production. Even though a compelling argument can be made for gaming preservation benefits that piracy enables, as more titles are simply lost to time each year. Sony and other regulatory bodies will likely take a dim view of the modders and their jailbreaks. One important element in the PS5's jailbreak story that shouldn't be understated is the response that Sony will likely have to it. Even though the process is still in its infancy and therefore prone to teething issues, it's hard to imagine the publisher hanging around to take action against the modders. As a result of this, most console owners will likely experience elements of Sony's response even if they have no plans to jailbreak their own PS5s. For starters, based on how the PS3 and PS4 were jailbroken, it's highly likely that Sony will push a new firmware update to its current console at the first available opportunity. Even though the current PS5 jailbreak only works on outdated firmware, the publisher will want to put extra distance between the console and its modders. Instead of focusing on new features, it stands to reason that a significant portion of the console's development will now be realigned along these lines to counter the jailbreak. The fact that the jailbreak has gotten off the ground so quickly means it's only a matter of time before the PS5 is opened up even further. This means, in general, owners of Sony's current generation console could experience more patches and firmware updates being pushed to them at an increased frequency. Similarly to the PS3's infamous patches that added little in the way of obvious progress on a regular basis. Although there are benefits to having a jailbroken PS5 from a consumer perspective, it's hard to imagine Sony being overly pleased about any of these. To protect its intellectual properties and hardware, a part of the publisher's response will therefore be geared toward fighting back on a legal front as well. While it's unlikely that this process will have an impact on the console's future or most owners, a general PSN ban order might be put in place for anyone found to have jailbroken their PS5. EA and Omega Force officially revealed a new Monster Hunter-like game Wild Hearts Wednesday morning with a trailer showing off towering beasts and impressive technology. The collaboration between EA and the Dynasty Warriors studio was revealed earlier this week, hinting at a AAA title set in feudal Japan with few details given at the time. The project will be the first major collaboration between EA and Omega Force, with Omega Force mostly working on the Warriors franchise and its many spin-offs. Now, the newest project from Omega Force looks to take inspiration from Capcom's hunting franchise. The reveal trailer for Wild Hearts shows off a breathtaking world steeped in Japanese architecture and mythology. The game's first video introduces players to the world of Azuma, a lush landscape filled with a variety of unusual creatures. Wild Hearts looks to follow in a similar hunting gameplay style to Monster Hunter, showing off some of the massive beasts players will fight throughout their adventure. Some highlights of the initially revealed kimono include a colossal boar covered in moss and algae, a giant squirrel that causes trees to grow, and a wolf in a frozen tundra. A major focus of Wild Hearts' reveal trailer that looks to set the game apart from Monster Hunter comes with the emphasis on technology. Players will be able to use a variety of technology and buildable items to aid them in battles with monsters, including building blocks to help players gain altitude. Some other inventions the players can use to aid them in battle include a helicopter-like propeller to hover over larger enemies and a hammer catapult. The trailer also teases the ability to upgrade players' weapons with a variety of effects. EA closed the trailer by confirming the release date of Wild Hearts for early next year. The trailer revealed the collaboration between Koei Tecmo and EA will launch on February 17, 2023 and has been confirmed as exclusive to next-gen consoles and PC. The game will also reportedly feature crossplay between Xbox, PlayStation, and PC, with players across all platforms able to team up to take on the game's roster of ferocious monsters. Wild Hearts comes as the latest game to join EA's lineup of DA Originals, a publishing initiative between EA and other development studios. EA has already seen massive success with several games published through the EA Originals program, including 2021 Game of the Year It Takes Two and Coldwood Interactive's Unravel. The unique mix of giant monsters and technology will look to set Wild Hearts apart from its inspiration when it launches early next year. A new trailer for Electronic Arts and Omega Force's upcoming monster hunting game Wild Hearts focuses on the game's construction and traversal mechanics. What may be Wild Hearts' biggest challenge is differentiating itself from Capcom's incredibly popular Monster Hunter franchise. EA has decided to confront this challenge head-on. The new gameplay trailer for Wild Hearts focuses on a boss fight with a giant boar kimono and the life-sustaining technology necessary to defeat it. Omega Force calls it ancient Karakuri technology, but some fans have been jokingly comparing it to Fortnite building. Wild Hearts players will collect materials and with them be able to build a diverse range of combat field tools and structures. As players progress through Wild Hearts, they will discover new types of resources from a variety of sources. These resources can then be used to build new Karakuri, necessary to take down even more challenging kimono opponents. The new Wild Hearts trailer is framed as a hunt against a giant, corrupted boar kimono. But the hunt is designed to showcase how Karakuri are used throughout a hunt. The player starts far away from their opponent. They build a helicopter-like Karakuri and launch into the sky for the first leg of their journey. They then use a giant crossbow to create a zipline high into the mountains. One last Karakuri, a trampoline of sorts, takes the player to a mountain peak where the boar waits. 3 Karakuri are used for traversal before the fight even begins. In the ensuing fights, all 3 previously shown Karakuri are used as part of combat. Other tools, including a trebuchet-like hammer, an exploding giant door barricade, a cannon that shoots stunning fireworks, and a literal giant bomb, are also used to control and damage the boar. Suffice to say, players will have a range of options available to them, allowing enemies to be fought through creative means. The Karakuri aren't the only focus of the trailer, of course. The boar boss itself is showcased, with a variety of attacks both physical and magical. What appears to be drop-in co-op allows additional players to join the fight intermittently throughout the fight. And each of the players is shown to have different weapons and styles of play. And there are several nods to Monster Hunter regarding battle preparation and field management. In 7 minutes, the new Wild Hearts trailer works to not only show how the game delivers on the expectations of a monster hunting game but also how it will differentiate itself. Luckily for EA and Omega Force, most of what Monster Hunter fans want is simply more monster hunting. But if Wild Hearts can deliver improved gameplay, storytelling, and online connectivity, too, it might have a lot of potential. E3 has officially confirmed the dates for next summer's gaming convention alongside more info for the event's long-awaited in-person return. Over more than 25 years since the annual event was first held in 1995, E3 has become a staple of the summer season for gamers with plenty of major reveals and announcements. However, the expo was heavily impacted by the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, with both 2020 and 2022's E3 shows being cancelled and 2021 being held as an online-only event. Now, E3 is gearing up for its grand return next year. E3 officially revealed information about the convention's return Monday morning, announcing its collaboration with PAX manager Reed Pop to help with the in-person event. E3 2023 will take place at the Los Angeles Convention Center from June 13 to June 16. The event will reportedly feature separate days for businesses and consumers, with E3 reserving the first days of the convention for businesses. The change is reportedly to make it easier for businesses to connect with other attendees and conducting interviews with potential employees. The event was also confirmed to feature separate venues for the business and consumer sides of the event within the Los Angeles Convention Center. The event will feature a business-exclusive area that is planned to include quiet workspaces for businesses to meet with one another. E3 has also confirmed the first 2 days of the convention will be exclusive to businesses, while June 15th and 16th will see the event opened up to consumers as well. E3 has yet to confirm any of its major attendees for next year's convention. E3's return to in-person events would be one of the biggest examples of events slowly returning to normalcy after the effects of the pandemic. This year has seen the return of major competitive in-person events for a variety of games, including Pokémon and League of Legends. 2022 has also welcomed back in-person festivities for a variety of major gaming conventions, including Tokyo Game Show's first in-person event since 2019. The return of E3 to a physical venue will look to be one of the gaming industry's biggest events of the year next June. This year it doesn't look like PlayStation will be holding a showcase. That may be they aren't ready enough, or they have some bombshells that could impact them in the Activision Blizzard's acquisition by Microsoft with exclusivity and other things. If we don't get a PlayStation showcase this year, then I'll definitely want them to attend E3 next year and host a conference in front of a live audience. I want that E3 2016-like moments back. CD Projekt Red has grown to be one of the most well-respected and popular development studios in the industry, boasting an array of successful franchises under its umbrella. The company recently held an investor call outlining its near-future plans for its most exciting IPs like Cyberpunk and The Witcher. With a surprisingly comprehensive amount of exciting announcements being made, it is no secret that CD Projekt Red has come under some criticism in recent years due to the tumultuous launch of Cyberpunk 2077. But the fan reception to the recent investor call is a clear indication of the continued support for the development studio. While most of these announcements concern franchises that are already well established, it seems that CD Projekt Red is looking to expand even further into new IPs. The Witcher series of games is arguably the flagship franchise that comes under the CD Projekt Red name. Finding its video game roots all the way back in 2007, The Witcher games and The Tale of Geralt have won the hearts of a wide-spanning fan base over the course of 3 massively successful mainline titles. A testament to just how popular the Witcher franchise has become is present in the fact that the series has recently been adapted to TV, with The Witcher receiving its own well-received Netflix show starring Henry Cavill. With this popularity in mind, it is no wonder that fans have eagerly been anticipating news of a new installment to the series, and the recent Projekt Red announcements did not disappoint. CD Projekt has announced that it's developing 2 more games set in the Witcher universe, in addition to the title that's already in development by the studio. Alongside the recent resurgence in Cyberpunk 2077 thanks to the Cyberpunk Edgerunner series, CD Projekt Red appears to be doubling down on its ambitious plans for the future of the Witcher franchise. Back in May during its earnings presentation, the company stated that the bulk of its development will be dedicated to expanding Cyberpunk 2077. At the time, the presentation also hinted at all the Witcher-related projects that are in the works, though not many details were shared then. Now it looks like cdpr's priorities might be shifting back towards The Witcher as the company looks to build the franchise even further. As of now, cdpr states that over 150 people are currently working on Project Polaris, The Witcher 4, and that it will set off a new trilogy in the series. Further, the company mentions it plans to execute the trilogy within a 6-year period after Witcher 4's release. More importantly, the company announcement also included 2 more upcoming Witcher games. The first is Project Sirius, an innovative take on the Witcher universe, by CD Projekt-owned studio Molasses Flood. The title is currently in its pre-production phase with over 60 personnel involved in development. The second is Canis Majoris, which will be developed by a third-party studio led by ex-Witcher veterans. In terms of format, this title is set to be a single-player open-world RPG experience, similar to how the Witcher games have been so far. On top of all this, the company has officially indicated that it's introducing multiplayer to the new Witcher games. The Molasses Flood is known for its games The Flame in the Flood and Drake Hollow, 2 adventure survival games. CD Projekt Red stated that Sirius would be a multiplayer game developed by the Molasses Flood with some support from cdpr. It will differ from past titles due to this multiplayer access while also having a single-player campaign. An adventure survival game would be something new for the Witcher series. By having Sirius be a survival game, it would be playing to the Molasses Flood's strengths as a developer. A multiplayer survival game set in the Witcher series could fit quite well. There are many unexplored areas of the world that could see settlers trying to build a small village. The different monsters of the series could make an appearance and make for a base defense mode. By combining this with co-op, The Witcher could join the likes of other successful survival games like Valheim or Rust. This could easily be done in single-player as well, where the player could gather materials, build a base on their own, and accept quests with the option of multiplayer still being there. Canis Majoris is said to be a major title in the Witcher series by CD Projekt Red. However, this title will also be developed by an external studio that has worked on past Witcher games. This is reminiscent of games like Batman Arkham Origins, a game presented as a main series title, but handed off to a different developer than the studio that created the main series. A Witcher game developed by a third party could be no different, especially if it is being worked on by a studio that already has an understanding of the series. Canis Majoris could even use this as an opportunity to play parts of the story not in a video game before. Even though Geralt's story in the series is over, this game could bring players back to the events of the book series. Many players have not read the Witcher books, and this could be the chance to ease players into the series and give context to some events of the later games. cdpr announced earlier this year that a new saga in the Witcher series is in the works with a picture of a medallion in the snow. While this saga is likely years away, this still got players excited and speculating about what comes next. The series will not star Geralt of Rivia, which opens up the possibility for a new protagonist, which is likely to be Ciri. She has been known to own a cat medallion, thanks to Ciri taking one from Leo Bonhart in the events of the book series, so it is possible that the medallion in the teaser could be referring to her. Ciri played a significant part in the events of The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, and acted as a secondary protagonist to Geralt. Depending on which ending the player got in The Witcher 3, it could be a good setup for Ciri to take over as the primary protagonist of the series. The new saga could follow Ciri taking up the profession of her adopted father, wandering around the continent and completing monster-slaying jobs that need to be done. The new saga could also be an opportunity to change up the gameplay of the series to better fit Ciri's combat style. Some complaints towards The Witcher 3's combat have included how stiff it felt, though Ciri did not have as much of a problem with this as Geralt. Ciri had magic that helped her teleport around the battlefield and utilize her Elder Blood abilities to a destructive degree. This opens up tons of possibilities in how they could be used for gameplay, similarly to how the player would use signs in previous titles. These powers could also lead to fast travel to many places across the Witcher world due to Ciri being able to canonically teleport in this way. The newly announced Witcher titles have players of the series excited to get back into the series. There has already been some success in spin-offs to the Witcher series, like Gwent the Witcher card game and Thronebreaker The Witcher Tales. So titles made by other developers like the Molasses Flood are not out of the question. There's a lot of value to be had in these new games and a new saga following the main series. Adam Kaczynski, president of CD Projekt Red, announced that there wouldn't just be a fourth Witcher game, but rather an entirely new trilogy. The first game of the new trilogy is working under the codename Polaris, and Kaczynski stated that the release wouldn't be until 2025 at the very earliest. The long wait is because cdpr is working on developing the Unreal Engine 5 technology to make it work with the game series. With each new Witcher game, Kaczynski feels it will take 3 years, meaning that the fourth installment is expected around late 2025, with the fifth in 2028 and the sixth in 2031. Those are rough estimates at the moment, though, depending on the game engine's development over the next year or so. As for how The Witcher 4 will release, don't expect it to be tied to just the Epic Games launcher. cdpr CTO Paweł Zawadny said that while the two parties are working together, the game won't be part of an exclusive arrangement. With all three of these Witcher projects stated to be story-driven, single-player focused experiences, it seems most likely that any multiplayer components will be secondary to the main gameplay loop of each title. That being said, there are a few different ways that CD Projekt Red could incorporate multiplayer in the Witcher series. By far the most exciting way to incorporate multiplayer in future Witcher games would be to allow multiple players to jump into one big open world together. It would be a little tricky to figure out, but having 2 to 4 fellow Witchers explore the continent together, rescuing townsfolk, slaying monsters, and getting embroiled in local politics is the ideal way to introduce multiplayer in the Witcher series. Alternatively, CD Projekt Red could take some inspiration from Dark Souls and Deathloop and introduce an invasion mechanic. Players could invade another Witcher's game and take on the role of a boss monster, giving the Witcher a tougher challenge to face. Or, players could take on the role of a Witcher from another school, and try to race the other player to kill the monster and claim the prize before them. With an intense game of cat and mouse breaking out once the player has the monster's trophy and is on their way to town to collect the reward. Unfortunately, the most likely scenario is that future Witcher titles will add a multiplayer component to their mini-games. For instance, Gwent was one of the most beloved aspects of The Witcher 3, and it'll probably be seen again in the sequel. It only makes sense that CD Projekt Red would want to make Gwent multiplayer in the actual Witcher games themselves, just as it is in the standalone spin-off. The investor call also confirmed that The Witcher 3 is still set to come to current generation consoles this year. While the new games are years away, fans will find no shortage of Witcher content. In December, the Witcher Blood Origin prequel series will be coming to Netflix, followed by Season 3 of The Witcher in summer 2023. Further, Season 4 and Season 5 of the popular Netflix series are reportedly set to start production back-to-back. Either way, the next few years promise to be an exciting time to be a Witcher fan. CD Projekt Red has officially announced that a sequel to Cyberpunk 2077 is in development. Cyberpunk 2077 was massively hyped in the years leading up to its release, but those great expectations backfired big time when the game actually launched. While the high-end PC version was generally regarded as another stellar CD Projekt Red game, the console versions suffered from devastating technical problems that were bad enough for Sony to remove it from the PlayStation Store. CD Projekt Red has since made a serious effort to improve Cyberpunk 2077 through a variety of important updates, and the studio's hard work has paid off. Cyberpunk 2077's improvements combined with interest from the Cyberpunk Edgerunners anime have given the game a second lease on life, and it's sold 20 million copies. Luckily, Cyberpunk fans can look forward to a new entry in the series at some point down the line. Project Orion is the codename of the in-development Cyberpunk 2077 sequel, and it promises to prove the full power and potential of the Cyberpunk universe. Further details on Project Orion aren't available, but the game will be developed by the core team at CD Projekt Red. With multiple endings and branching story paths, Cyberpunk 2077's main story didn't exactly set itself up for a sequel. From the end of Act 1, players are told that V only has a certain amount of time left to live, and a lot of the story revolves around trying to reverse that to no avail. While the curse of Johnny Silverhand's consciousness in V's mind doesn't stop them from shooting, looting, and engaging with some of Cyberpunk 2077's romance options. It does leave directions for a sequel pretty limited, as even in the endings where V lives, they are only given a few months left to do so. This means that Project Orion could depart from V's storyline entirely. From the success of Cyberpunk Edgerunners, it has been proven that V isn't needed to make a story set in Night City work. However, there is one way that CD Projekt Red could ensure V makes it to Cyberpunk 2077 sequel. The sun ending in Cyberpunk 2077 leaves the game and V's fate largely open-ended, allowing the protagonist to set off into space as they prepare to infiltrate the Crystal Palace Casino. While it would be interesting to see a narrative in space for Project Orion, this would disappoint some players since it would essentially render the other Cyberpunk 2077 endings as meaningless. There are some other endings that could see V live. But again, this would require a lot of work from CD Projekt Red to ensure each player feels as though their decisions in the original game mattered as they enter the sequel. With so many problems caused by either making one ending canon or trying to start a new game that fits all choices, it seems like V might not be appearing in the sequel to Cyberpunk 2077, giving players a fresh slate when they re-enter Night City. Without V or Johnny Silverhand, this leaves space in Project Orion to take on an entirely new plot. Even if V isn't playable in the sequel, players could still feel their impact on the world of Cyberpunk 2077 if CD Projekt Red were to pursue other plot points. Seeing what Alt Cunningham does with Mikashi could lead to another game's worth of narrative, or considering Arasaka's downward spiral at the end of many Cyberpunk 2077 playthroughs. Another option could explore the power vacuum left by the mega corporation. Considering that CD Projekt Red could start completely fresh with Project Orion, it is possible that Night City could be swapped out for another setting in the Cyberpunk 2077 sequel. There are plenty of other interesting locations in the setting that could be explored. Even just heading outside of Night City, the new United States of America has plenty of interesting locations due to its in-depth lore as part of the Cyberpunk universe. Moving further away, other large cities like Rio de Janeiro and Busan also come up in the lore a lot, making them potential locations for the sequel. As stated, space also exists if CD Projekt Red wanted to push Project Orion in a more sci-fi direction. The codename Orion could even be hinting towards this, considering the Orion constellation. However, even while these locations might be interesting for a Cyberpunk 2077 sequel, there is still plenty left to do in Night City. The Phantom Liberty expansion will be giving players new areas to explore in the Cyberpunk setting's most infamous city. But even then, there's still lots of space for CD Projekt Red to mess around with. Alongside plenty of places left to see in Night City. The City of Dreams holds a lot more interesting individuals and characters from the Cyberpunk tabletop that didn't quite get to shine in the video game. With the player already having taken on Arasaka or made a powerful ally out of the mega corporation in Cyberpunk 2077. This gives CD Projekt Red the option to give gamers a chance to have an even bigger influence over the world in the Cyberpunk 2077 sequel. However, having already produced a narrative with huge stakes, it is possible that the sequel could also turn these risks down a little to tell a more personal story, similar to that of Cyberpunk Edgerunners. There is also the question of when Cyberpunk 2077 sequel could take place. While the title of sequel implies that Project Orion will take the story forward, there is the possibility that it could wind the clock back. Take Red Dead Redemption 2, for example, which acts as a prequel despite it being the 2 following its title. As with the question of where CD Projekt Red could go with Orion, the time period could also allow players to see some huge moments in Cyberpunk lore, such as the corporate wars that are referenced in Cyberpunk 2077. CD Projekt Red offered a small update on the Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty expansion as well, confirming that the expansion is in the final stages of its development and that there are currently more than 350 people involved in making it. Needless to say, CD Projekt Red is going all out with Phantom Liberty, which makes sense as it will allow the studio to capitalize on the newfound positivity surrounding the Cyberpunk 2077 game and the Cyberpunk brand in general. While Cyberpunk 2077 had a disastrous launch a couple of years ago, CD Projekt Red has been able to turn things around for the franchise in a big way. Hopefully Project Orion will be able to avoid the pitfalls that befell its predecessor and live up to fan expectations. During CD Projekt Group strategy update, the company announced a plethora of new content in development, including a new IP named Hadar. This is a dramatic announcement, given that the company's reputation has been built on turning third-party source content into engaging video games. During the update for investors, in addition to announcing a sequel to Cyberpunk 2077, cdpr announced its own original IP, currently called Hadar. Comments exploded beneath the post, with fans wondering what Hadar meant. Some felt it was a Hebrew word, with no clear answer on what the word translates to in English. According to CD Projekt, the title has been in IP incubation since late 2021. Based on the post, it appears actual game development hasn't started. However, it's clear that this is an original IP meant to stand alongside Cyberpunk 2077 and The Witcher in CD Projekt's library. The studio stated that a strike team is currently working on the conceptual phase of development, building a foundation for the game. The studio also commented that it is developing the game from scratch, a first for the studio that usually bases games on popular existing material. The Witcher is based on a Polish fantasy novel series, with Cyberpunk being based around an existing tabletop RPG. During the investor phone call, the studio said, "We are working exclusively on a foundation for this new setting." While the studio didn't describe what type of game Hadar will be, cdpr repeatedly referred to itself as a developer of RPG games during the investor call. Therefore, it makes logical sense that Hadar will be an RPG of some variety. Studio head Adam Kaczynski was quoted as saying, "We are here to create revolutionary role-playing games with memorable stories that inspire gamers." It's in the absolute earliest stages of conception, with a strike team working on that, and while concrete details were obviously not provided, CD Projekt Red said fans shouldn't expect any major surprises from the IP. In other words, CD Projekt Red wants to rely on its strengths, suggesting this is going to be another open-world RPG. That's perfect for the developer, but with that in mind, there's a strong case it should be a sci-fi game. No matter what Projekt Hadar turns out to be, it's going to be compared to The Witcher 3, the new Witcher games, Cyberpunk 2077, and of course depending on the time of the releases, perhaps even Cyberpunk 2077's sequel. One comparison that would not bode well for Projekt Hadar is if it were another fantasy game like The Witcher or another Cyberpunk game like Cyberpunk 2077. cdprojektred's talent for open-world RPGs means it could do just about anything, and retreading the same approaches would only do the new IP harm. Indeed, when Cyberpunk 2077 was first revealed, the whole idea of a Cyberpunk game from the Witcher developer carried the momentum of its hype for years. If CD Projekt Red takes fantasy and Cyberpunk off the board, the biggest question is what setting and style the game would take, and sci-fi is perfect. It's more than just Cyberpunk, and it's a completely different tone from fantasy. And sure, there is competition like BioWare's upcoming Mass Effect 4 and Bethesda's Starfield, but this new IP is likely years and years away. The new Witcher saga will begin before it releases, and again, it's probable that the Cyberpunk sequel does as well. There's certainly space for more sci-fi RPGs in the industry, and years out, that's an even stronger stance. What's more, CD Projekt Red has billed this as an original IP, built from scratch, meaning it won't be based on an existing property like Witcher or Cyberpunk. This is the company's time to expand its libraries, and when doing that with its current lineup of games, it should look up to do so. This ambitious news comes essentially simultaneously with the announcement that CD Projekt Red is set to open up a new studio hub in Boston, with the company establishing itself further in North America alongside its existing Vancouver hub. While this new Boston hub is set to focus primarily on Cyberpunk content, it is clear that the company is at a stage of rapid growth and development. With the popular Cyberpunk and Witcher franchises covering a wide breadth of potential settings and gameplay genres, many fans are understandably curious as to what kind of game Hadar will turn out to be. That being said, it remains clear that CD Projekt Red will reveal more as time goes on, with a litany of releases and projects scheduled to become clearer and excite fans even further in the very near future. The only question is how they can manage 5 projects simultaneously. Are they stretching themselves too thin? And that's all for the video, guys. Like and share the video for a greater audience. Comment your thoughts on the topics, and donations are always appreciated. Subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon, and until then, from SMPV, it's goodbye.